This is the last of our series of lectures, and I am very, very happy and I feel very honored to be in the presence of these two wonderful filmmakers, James Soloman and Pieter-Jan de Pue. Welcome. And to begin with, I teach two courses here at the university, one in documentary appreciation and one in production. And in our classes, we often discuss the thin line between fiction and nonfiction in films. And coincidentally, both of you are dealing with these issues in your films and in your career.
Firstly, it is really great, I think, for both of us to be here, and we're extraordinarily appreciative to the documentary initiative. The idea of journalism has always been a central part of the work that I do, sort of questioning, exploring the truth. Typically, what I'm drawn to are stories we think we know. They are kind of iconic stories that we all know, come to have sort of shaped the way we see the world, but aren't necessarily narratives that are entirely factual. The transition for me into filmmaking was through journalism, and as Nancy rightly said, the first film that I made took me 18 years to get made. The President Lincoln, as many of you know, is the most famous American president, but every American is taught that he was shot in a theater by one man, and that was the end of the story. He was assassinated, the first American president to be assassinated. It's one man shot. And I learned what anyone could learn was that actually it was a broader conspiracy. I am drawn to not statues, but the people behind stories and the lives that people have led, the people who were impacted by actual historical events or real events. In the late 1990s, I learned of a story that was a very seminal, important crime that had taken place in New York in the early 1960s. On March 13, 1964, a woman named Kitty Genovese was coming home, 28 years old, was coming home from where she worked early in the morning, and she was brutally attacked. At first, the murder of Kitty Genovese was reported as in 4 paragraphs inside the newspaper. 2 weeks later, the New York Times reported on its front page that 38 people for over a half hour had watched as this woman was attacked 3 times and not one person had called the police. And she became, in a sense, the symbol of urban apathy, of people not getting involved. And as a result of her murder, it helped inspire the 911 emergency system in New York, Good Samaritan laws, neighborhood watch groups. It's even credited with having some influence on the US invasion of Iraq in the early 2000s. It is a case that is taught in every psych and sociology class in the United States, people not getting involved. One person who I met had the most profound effect on me was her brother, Bill Genovese, 12 years younger than Kitty, who had not just been affected by the death of this sister who he was so close to, but by the way she reportedly died. And I was still haunted by this story. And in 2004, the New York Times questioned its own story, whether 38 had actually seen or heard what had actually happened. And Bill Genovese was motivated to find out for himself what actually happened. That's what The Witness is about. It is the story of the unraveling of the mythic death and forgotten life of Kitty Genovese. Instead of making a film where I'm scripting what people found out, I actually, in a sense, decided better to actually learn from the people who lived this story directly. And that's what this film is. It's a documentary.
Exactly what was it you heard?
Save me, save me.
Didn't this frighten you or shock you?
No.
I was 16 when my sister Kitty was murdered in New York City. For years, I avoided the details of that night. but it's worse not knowing the truth. The Times story was seen as proof that New York City was uncaring, and my sister's been the symbol of bystander apathy for decades.
No one investigated the 38, no one followed up on it or anything of that nature.
Was it worth all the attention it got, or was it a media creation?
It's a fascinating story, and undoubtedly sold newspapers.
I heard somebody saying, help, help. I called the police.
You called the police?
Always.
The story doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm sick of listening to people tell you 38 people stood by and watched. That's not so.
It really doesn't take a lot to kill a person, I guess.
Maybe we could start it off by talking about what it is you're trying to accomplish by having a meeting with Winston Moseley.
The choices that he made in his life were all related to the fact that no one helped his sister. And if he knows the truth, that's a peacefulness.
At what point are you going to be satisfied?
50 years later, we're still talking about kidding.
I can't stop until I feel like it's over.
Yeah,
Like,
when is it over?
I'll know when it's over.
Bill has a lot at stake to find out the truth about what happened to his sister, not only because it was the defining story of his sister's life, in a sense, because her life was erased by 30 minutes of her death. She's only known, really, for the way she died. But also because Bill is in a wheelchair, a double amputee as a result of that story. So he tracks down the journalist who covered this story, so why this story was covered this way, and to find the killer who killed his sister, who is unbelievably still alive, 52 years later in jail, the longest serving inmate in New York State prison, and to meet him. That is what The Witness is about. And the reason the film is called The Witness, in a sense, is, and as journalists, you are all bearing witness to a certain kind of truth. And the film, as I mentioned at the outset, and what interests me is about narratives, real and imagined, that shape our lives. Bill has lived with a story that has shaped his life that isn't necessarily a truthful, accurate story, but it's real and has shaped his life, so it's as real as any story. And I think as a journalist, you would find probably very inspiring, in a sense, what this one individual decided and was able to do through force of will and need to challenge a story that has lived, in a sense, for a half century, and to unravel it because he needed to unravel it.
Thank you. Thank you for... Jan, tell us about how you come from being a world-traveling photographer to making this film and spent 7 years with this film.
I graduated from the film school in 2006 in Brussels, and I started working as a photographer, mainly for humanitarian organizations in Afghanistan. And while working for those humanitarian organizations, I discovered like a lot of little stories of children who were trying to survive in the war in Afghanistan. And I wanted to tell the world of the kids in Afghanistan, but embedded in this conflict. And I wanted to tell the conflict through their eyes. So that was actually the beginning of the script. So from there on, we start writing with a script doctor. And in 2010, we went the first time back to Afghanistan with a very small crew, with a sound engineer, to shoot the first part of the film, which was actually the American Army Taliban part. So we got embedded with an American unit for a couple of months near the Pakistani border, and we captured this war in general, so in a full documentary way. At the end of 2010, we went back to Belgium. We edited some of the rushes of this material that we shot, and we made a first teaser about the film, or what was going to be the film, actually. And we presented this teaser at a lot of film markets, and we pitched the story about the kids of Afghanistan. But a lot of commissioning editors, they were really interested to participate in this project, but obviously the first question was like, okay, you want to tell a story about Afghan kids in a war, but you're showing me only US soldiers fighting. So where are the kids? And of course, they were true. So in 2011, we came back to Afghanistan to focus on the world of the kids. So 2011 was a very difficult year because with the American Army, it was kind of easy, you know, in that sense that the Army was providing all logistics. They organize everything for you. You jump on a helicopter, you take your gear with the helicopter, they give you food, they protect you. Even Afghanistan is a difficult country. You're kind of comfortable with them. But then when we were together with those kids in the middle of the mountains, we were alone. And I learned very fast, because I was only with some Afghan friends, that making a film on this, in these hard conditions without any logistical support would be very hard. So that was one lesson that we learned in 2011. But anyway, after 4 months, we had enough material to make a second teaser. And especially, I wanted to tell in the film the imagination and the projections and the fantasies of those kids and what they were thinking, what was going to happen with them and with Afghanistan after the withdrawal of the NATO and the American Army. And I think this layer pushed me also towards a kind of a hybrid film, because I wanted to visualize as well their projections and their dreams. So, and of course, if you're gonna start making a dream visual, then you're going into a kind of a fiction style. And we were mixing this up. We knew from the very beginning that we were going to mix this up with images from the hard reality on the field, and which was shot in a very documentary style, and especially the parts with the army. I just want to tell a bit about the hybrid structure, because a lot of questions are coming up about this approach. So it's first of all, I wanted to tell a film about Afghanistan with Afghans, and especially about the dreams of those kids. So as I mentioned before, I knew from the very beginning, if I'm going to visualize these dreams, that it was going to be a hybrid film anyway. But during the preparation of this film, I discovered a lot of small stories of kids who were saying, for example, one told me, I remember in the beginning in 2008 or 2009, someone said me, when the Americans are going back home, I will become the king of Afghanistan, and I will grab power, and I'm gonna take the palace, and I'm gonna live there with my queen, with my girl, and we're gonna rule Afghanistan, and I will have a big group of friends on horseback who are gonna protect me and my queen and my palace. Another was saying, okay, when the Americans are going back, if the Americans are gonna stay here and fight the Taliban much more, and even the Taliban is gonna rule maybe in the future our country, then I'm gonna escape from Afghanistan with my horse and with my girl on the back of the horse, and I'm gonna ride towards the stars. Another one was saying, I'm gonna marry the most beautiful girl of Afghanistan, and I will find a lot of opium, because the father apparently of the girl was opium addicted, and I'm gonna give him 5 kilograms of opium, and then he will be agree that I can marry his girl. So all little stories like this I discovered during the preparation, and of course they were based on their dreams and also based on reality in Afghanistan, but it was really difficult to find those kids back, because they grew up, or they disappeared, or they moved to another place in Afghanistan. So I collected all those little stories, and I decided to look for one main character, Ghulam Nasir, the little boy that you see in the film, and to hang on all these ideas and all those dreams on him, and that he would become a kind of a translator or like a kind of a performer who is the voice of all these dreams of Afghan kids. And that's one of the reasons why we stage so many things with Ghulam Nasir, but again based on a reality that I wanted to tell in Afghanistan.
Afghan forces will take the lead, and this war will come to a responsible end.
باید این تصمیم که سر بوده. حوض باشیدشم رئیس تو زین مسئولیت نست.
Two things. Jail or death.
به زودی شبا و روزا یک برابر خواهد شدم. ولی من هنوزم از بام دنیا در سر کردن هستم. با انتظار یک جوابم میکشم. افغان‌ها هنوز انتظار پادشاهشان هستند.
Peter's film is very sensation about, you know, the dust, the feeling, the tactile aspects of a place, and it's dreamlike. And my film is The Witness is rooted very much more in information and gathering of information. But what I'm really struck by in watching your clips is how much both subjects are about casualties of war and the resilience. The subject of my film is a guy whose family was blown apart by an extraordinarily tragic, violent death, and the film explores the aftermath of an act of violence on a family over a half century, and a man who has lost his legs by that violent act and is dealing in his own very cerebral way. The film gets to a point towards the end of an emotional catharsis, but it is a man who is holding it inside. Your film, as I'm watching it, is people who are in the midst of the creation of casualties of war, both the servicemen, but of course, even more profoundly, the children and the people who live there, and as you say, the resiliency. But it is interesting, these are subjects, and I wonder, you know, if you were to visit your subjects 50 years from now, as grown adults, how they would have processed, because what we're watching in The Witness is a film about a man processing something that happened 50 years ago and how it still holds him. And I just thought sometimes when you look at two films, they don't seem at all related. And I was just watching them thinking, oh, that's kind of interesting. What you heard from the two of us, we both set out to make something else and ended up making these films. That wasn't our intention. sort of the accident. And in filmmaking, it is the accident of what happens that you don't anticipate, and that's the memorable moment, right? That's the human moment.
Okay, I'll ask one more question, and then working in films that take so long to finish, what were maybe some of the factors that kept you going?
I think your relationship, if you work on something for a very long time, and there were 2 films that I worked on for over 10 years, and your relationship to the subject changes as you develop. In The Witness, it was without question, and I think Nancy knows where I'm probably going with this. I started off making a film about a brother who lost a sister, about sibling loss. And that idea of loss was completely abstract to me. I didn't know it. I was empathetic. I appreciated the loss, but I didn't know it personally. But in the course of making a film about a brother who lost a sister, my brother, my only sibling, and the person who I looked up to more than anyone in the world, got sick and was diagnosed with leukemia and died. So sometimes life follows art, art follows life. And so that propelled me more than anything to finish the film. I was making a film initially about an investigation, but it was ultimately a film about loss.
For me, it's as I told before, it was a big struggle to make this film with a lot of ups and downs. But especially after the attack in Afghanistan in 2013, I was so convinced about the story of those kids. And their strong resilience that the more I stayed with them and the more time I spent with them and I talked with them, and the more I learned their language and I could communicate in a very, very close way with them, the stronger our relationship became. And so the more I was convinced that I had to make the story, even we got attacked in 2013, I said, yeah, I have to continue with this project. But Afghanistan, it became at some point also, especially me, but I think some other crew members too, but especially me, we became so embedded in this culture that at some point we were getting to know Afghanistan so well, and we were starting to think as Afghans. But that made the end so hard too, because at some point the film shoot stops, and then you have to go back home and you have to edit the film, and then you end up in an editing suit, and it's like you get a bit crazy. But it's I think it's just that Afghanistan gives you also so much positive energy. Afghanistan is not only negative things, and that's also something I wanted to express in the film, that there is a message of hope and of light and of something positive thinking, and this was also reflecting to me. These people have a very positive way of looking towards life, and that was the positive energy that came to us to continue with the project.
And you end the film very positively. They found their palace.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you for both of you. My question may be a little stupid, I think, for Peter. Do you think the kids in your film as actors, they may have the chance to watch the film during their lifetime?
Just to reply on your question, we are right now organizing a screening in 2 screenings in Afghanistan. So we're gonna bring the film end of the summer to Kabul for an Afghan premiere. After that, we will organize a mobile cinema, and we will go with the mobile cinema into the mountains of where the place where Ghulam Nasir lives with his boys. And we're gonna screen the film in open air for the 3 villages, because it's not only the kids, it's like it was a huge organization of supplies with a lot of villagers cooperated with us to make this shoot possible. So it were actually 3 villages close to each other. And we're gonna bring all the people together, and we're gonna organize one big open air screening. And this is gonna be filmed as well for the end of the making of, because we have a making of film as well, and which is kind of finalized, this version, but it's there are gonna be some more annexes, and I think the ending part of the making of is the screening in the mountains. That's our next trip to Afghanistan. So the kids will definitely see it.
What do you think their response will be?
It's as I told before, it's for them, it's really hard to understand what cinema is, because they don't know this medium. They never, for example, they never watched the screen. You know, they never saw a laptop or a phone, or there is nothing there. There is not any connection. So everything that you have to do on level of communication is with satellite phones, and they don't have it because it's way too expensive. So last year I was in Afghanistan with a rough cut of the film, because I had to record the voice of the boy, and I came back there and I showed him a rough cut of the film, and he saw it with only 2 friends, and they were watching the screen, and at some point they were scared, and at some point they were laughing with themselves, and it was very, very strange for them, but very interesting. You know, they were so I think the screening will be a lot of fun, definitely, because for them it will be also, and not only for the kids, but for a lot of village elders even, it will be a first meeting with moving image and cinema. So that's why I think the making of is going to be very interesting to make. Also, you have to know, during the shoot with the kids, they had a lot of fun, you know, so they spent, like, we had so much, me too, you know, we spent 3 months together, and they were always on their horseback and shooting with their rifles, and we were doing all kind of funny stuff with them. And even it was their life, but playing their life for a camera, for them it was really enjoyable. So I think when they're gonna watch it again on the screen, it has nothing to do with a negative sense. So it's gonna be just fun for them, I think. So they will love it, I'm sure.
I have a question for James. How much would you say have you impacted the progress of your story? In particular, the brother going to meet the son of the person who found the girl, and for him to take those steps. Was it more your initiative, or were you just at the right time at the right moment?
It's such a good question, and it's the question that I think every documentary filmmaker needs to address. I think every journalist addresses that question. How much are we changing the reality or affecting the reality? At the very front of the film, I say it's a film by James Soloman, because Bill Genovese is actually narrating this story. There's no presence of the filmmaker essentially on screen, but you wonder, well, Bill's he's not a filmmaker. And so I acknowledge that there is a filmmaker's hand. But to speak to your very point, I don't think there are a lot of things, I have to acknowledge there are a lot of things that happen in the film that Bill probably wouldn't have done if he wasn't in collaboration with a filmmaker who had the resources, the knowledge, the experience to sort of make those things happen. There are 2 truths that are going on. There's a narrative truth, but there's also an emotional truth. That emotional truth is his. And what he's processing, what he's experiencing, what he's reacting to, how he reacts to the moment, that's all him. He's in front of the camera. I'm not. His natural reaction when the man says to him, the son says to him, "Are you a member of the crime?" When the son says to him in the film, "Your sister." I thought that your sister, my understanding of what happened when my father killed your sister is that your sister used racial slurs, and that's why he murdered her. And Bill Genovese's reaction in that scene is Bill. It's not me. And his reaction, that's not what happened, but the way he reacts is totally him. So the situation, sure, was certainly helped. He wanted to meet him, but no question that a filmmaker is affecting reality.
Thank you so much for your films. I really like the films from both of you. I have one question for Peter. So since you have been working as a photographer, is there any experience that you can share with us how to better visualize the film and how to better combine all those artistic elements into the film? That's it. Thank you.
it's really difficult to tell you what or how, because also this film in Afghanistan, it's much more handheld shoot than I expected from the very beginning, because my style is rather fixed and I like to make beautiful shots in a very static way. But then little by little I discovered that Afghanistan is not that perfect. You know, it's a very rough country. It's brutal. The life of the children is very hard. There is a war going on. The air is full of dust. There is no, everything is difficult. So that's why I came up with the format, first of all, that we want to shoot on 60mm, because it has this grain and it has this rough look, if you want. Digital would be too perfect and too crisp and too nice, you know, and too sharp. And then secondly, because of this roughness in Afghanistan, we decided to shoot much more handheld than expected, because we wanted to follow the kids that unexpected way, because they were moving very unexpectedly, and sometimes they had to grab something here and then they were diving to mine there. So by following this, we were just making this image even stronger, just to miss it. You know, it was a kind of a style that we invented in Afghanistan itself, because of the conditions in Afghanistan. So I can't tell you this is nice and this is not nice. It's something you have to experience yourself, I think, by doing a lot. But I just said in the interview, I think they asked me a similar question, how to make beautiful images. And I think one advice that I can give is just be curious all the time and try things and see what works and follow your feeling. And I think at some point you will come there. Making images is something that you have to do. You can't really learn. You can learn the basic techniques, but then after that, it's up to you to make something beautiful.
I think what it is very important to have a feeling of the place. I think what you're saying, right? To have a feeling of the place, and then how are you going to transport your audience to this place? And so visually, in a sense. And I think that's kind of like a summary of your experience,
sure.
Yes.
I do want to expand on that, because I think the subject matter often dictates. There's certain subject matter where the filmmaker's presence, imposition on it is appropriate. And there's certain subjects where it's maybe more appropriate to allow the subject, the information, what's in front of you, speak rather than you impose on it. In the course of my film, I felt it was very important to allow the subject to not impose stylistically, overimpose on the subject. Peter has a different subject, a different approach. So I think part of that, so this idea that you're trying to create some sort of aesthetic beauty, if that's your aesthetic, and it's something that I heard in Peter's answer, if it's your aesthetic, that's a part of it, you know, what feels true to you, but to try to replicate some aesthetic that's outside of you, or to impose on the subject some aesthetic that may not be suggested by what you're actually filming. So it isn't just place, but I think it's actually also the subject. Is it information? Are you following words? Is that what's important? Is that what you're trying to convey, as opposed to necessarily images? Now, obviously, cinema is about images as well, but sort of.
Well, thank you all for coming. And one last thing, we'd like to take a picture of everybody who participated today. So come on up here and we'll take a photo, okay? And that will be on our Facebook.